Hi, and thank you for coming to today's presentation. I'm presenting as part of my software development processes assessment. It was a group assignment, unfortunately being an external student, doing this solo, and I'm also doing it in the lovely confines of my living room. So I apologise for any lighting issues, but it is certainly a makeshift studio, as you can see, and hopefully the little balancing act with the presentation monitor there lasts the whole presentation. Look, my topic for the presentation is insecure protocols. It probably isn't my first choice, but unfortunately the gun was a little bit slow out of the holder, and some of the other groups managed to get into my preferred topics, which is obviously everyone's preferred topics, which would have been injection or SQL injection and cross-site scripting. But here we are with insecure protocols, which, to tell you the truth, I love most of them because they're quite easy to work with, and there is a reason for that, which we'll go into during the presentation. So what we'll do is first, and apologies for looking at the screen sometimes, but I'm not sort of all connected up here as I normally would be in a professional presentation. We'll investigate what makes a protocol insecure. You know, most people, and look, let's face it, 95% of the users out there just sit in front of a computer. If they want to send a file to a file transfer organisation, they'll use whatever tools available to them. If they want to view a website, they'll use whatever tools available to them. Fortunately, in modern age, a lot of people are a lot more sensitive when it comes to their private information, and there are some basic precautions that most people are taking these days, and we'll discuss those in the labs and go into them in the demonstrations. What I'm going to do today is identify two commonly used insecure protocols. They probably aren't the most complex, and they certainly are very easy to give an explanation on why they're insecure, and certainly demonstrating them is quite straightforward as well. So I will continue into obviously a demonstration and show you how they can be exploited, and certainly in this day and age with the sensitivity on intercontinental transfers and things like that, the way you actually present your data onto a network is quite important. I will highlight how we can prevent the exploit from occurring. There's some simple mechanisms, and certainly some of them are very straightforward that you know, every user, I would hope, in this day and age is familiar with. But you know, there's also some other things that maybe people aren't so familiar with. So let's go into what makes a protocol insecure. Okay, so the two main protocols that we'll be discussing today are FTP and HTTP. I have added Telnet in there because Telnet and FTP are, I wouldn't say distant cousins, I would say they're intimate relations. They've got an intimate relationship, and quite a bit of that has to do with the history of both protocols. We'll also have a bit of a discussion about decipherable transmission. Now, during I guess a packet sniffing, which we'll go into shortly, quite often on a brief examination of a packet, it might appear that a protocol is encrypted or hard to interpret, but quite often some form of UU encoding or base64 encoding has occurred, but in reality that's just as insecure as plain text. Also, another method which is quite a big issue in today's modern world, and we'll go into some topical issues with protocols in a moment, but is an encrypted transmission using a compromised or cracked method. Now, we've just recently gone through three quite, I guess, high-profile exploits. One of them being Heartbleed, which I think probably was about 7 or 8 months old now, but it actually was identifying an exploit that was introduced into an open source bit of software, you know, 3 or 4 years ago. So it actually took a long time before it was identified in mainstream, and obviously a lot of the vendors started patching their software. Now, in the interim, that exploit could easily have been used by someone trying to, I guess, do nasty stuff. Another one, just actually a week old now, and I thought I'd throw it in here because it's quite a good one to have in, is SSL-v3. SSL version 3 has just been identified as having a major exploit. Now that exploit's been named Poodle, and I'm not going into the expansion of that because, quite frankly, I didn't write it down, I can't remember, but basically it's an old protocol. I think the exploit's been around somewhere in the order of 10 years. And actually the way of bypassing or getting around the exploit is quite simply to disable the support for the SSL3 protocol. Now, it might sound like these exploits are making it the world totally insecure, and protocols, well, even encrypted protocols, not worthy of your trust. But many of these exploits can only be, I guess, exploited by having a machine that probably is either compromised or by having a friendly exploit. Someone who's already got access to log into the machine and then using one method or another being able to gain access to your sensitive content or material. So let's have a look at the history of FTP communication. Now, I guess this goes into why we're talking about a clear text and very insecure protocol. It was actually first put forward for an RSC, request for comment, in 1971. That's RSC 114, and I think we're into the early 10,000s now. So this is a long time ago, and at the time there weren't too many computers around. And in fact, FTP, when it was first established, was actually running on NCP, which is Novel Computer Protocol or something like that, and it was converted to TCP/IP, or actually IP/TCP, in 1980. Now, IP/TCP, I'm not sure of the history of when it became TCP/IP, but it's the precursor to TCP/IP and lives in I guess a quite familiar format of v4 IP stack. Now, transmitting security back then wasn't considered because really there was only a small number of computers in the world, and in fact some of the motivation for the FTP protocol was to communicate between a couple of computers on the same university site at MIT. Now that was expanded very quickly to communicate between MIT and Harvard, probably two of these esteemed and very well, I guess, recognisable information technology educational institutions back in the 70s and 80s, but other than that, there was no real way, because these were proprietary networks, and there was no mechanism for other people to sniff or capture the communication between these machines. There was no real need to consider the security. The FTP, just for I guess a little bit of interest, the current specification of FTP is based on RSC 959, which was released in 1985. So it certainly has come a long way, and it's got username and passwords, and now obviously there's deviations of FTP to introduce encryption, including FTPS over SSH and SFTP, which is an SSL-based encryption transmission. Or, sorry, now it's more TLS, version 1.3. Okay, so this is just going into what I've already spoken about, and talking about the limited audience. And the same goes for Telnet as well. I'm not actually using Telnet as one of my demonstrated insecure protocols, but Telnet is a clear text protocol that when it was first introduced there was really no consideration of security. A couple of others, the Simple Network Management Protocol, SNMP, which up until recently was insecure, and I think it was version 3 introduced a high level of security. A lot of that requirement has to do with the increased functionality and I guess sensitivity of the information that the SNMP protocol can give back to a monitoring source. SNMP being mainly for the remote management and monitoring of IT hardware. Okay. So what's the problem with clear text transfers? And I guess it goes without saying, clear text transfers can easily be decrypted because they are already decrypted, so they don't need to be decrypted. Usernames and passwords, when transmitted with clear text, are highly identifiable on a network. Now, I guess what you're doing if you're using an insecure protocol is actually trusting the network, and the argument becomes not really is the protocol you're using insecure, because most educated IT people can identify insecure protocols, but it becomes how secure is your network and how secure is the line between the transmitting host and the receiving host. Can that line be compromised? Has the line already been compromised? You may already be aware without, I guess, realising or putting two and two together and getting four. Another thing, I mean, clear text also doesn't mean that binary files can't be decrypted. Binary files are just as insecure as username and passwords in clear text. You get the start of the binary file, the end of the binary file, dump it out to a file name, get the right extension, and you can execute an exe or a bat file or whatever, or an MSI, sorry, just by capturing and dumping it out to a file. Okay, so a lot of people in this day and age will argue that switch-based network and non-broadcasting type protocols like a switch based with over TCP/IP is quite secure. Now, I think if one person has taught us that there is nothing such as a completely secure network, it's a little fellow named Edward Snowden. Now, he has, I guess, lifted the lid on organisations like the NSA in national security in America, and what they're doing, and has clearly demonstrated that they're not just capturing traffic going in and out of their country and also other places of the world, and this includes sniffing on fibre cables, but they're also able to brute force and crack, and also crack the major encryption protocols around the place to get access to that content. So I think in this day and age, you know, if your content is quite sensitive and you also want to keep it away from prying eyes, like a country-based organisation, and not just pointing the finger at the NSA, but also the Chinese government and other organisations, and Australia are a little bit this way as well, or starting to go down this way a lot more through legislation that's been proposed by both the Labor Party and now being rejigged by the Liberal Party, that you've got to take encryption of your content very seriously. What we've got on the slide there, and it's unfortunately not very easy to see, but the slide material will be available as part of the information pack, is quite an easy setup to capture light pulses on a fibre cable. Now, there are methods for getting around making it harder for people to sniff fibre cables, and most international organisations do this by introducing a seed or a random type signal, but you know, because the content is captured, it's decrypted or placed back together by supercomputers, and really, as we've seen with the release of a lot of the sensitive material from the American government, they're doing this now, and they're expanding it as much as they can. The world's, I guess, in some ways, a lot of the world's security depends on it. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go into a demonstration. The first demonstration will be showing the connection of an FTP, the connection from a client machine into an FTP server using just the FTP protocol. I've also created a little Java application just to, I guess, demonstrate a student-made application connecting into a remote FTP host, which will transmit a file into a internet-based server, and then obviously we'll have a look at a packet sniffing capturing utility which will show us what we've just transmitted over the line.